The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
Okay, let's go.
What do this railway line in Nigeria, this highway in the Himalayas, and this seaport in Sri Lanka have in common? Believe it or not, they're all part of the same mega project, China's New Silk Road. This massive mega project comprises 2,600 individual projects in over 100 countries, costs $4 trillion, and affects 69% of the world's population. It's arguably the biggest and most expensive mega project in human history. China claims it will help boost global trade, but as we'll uncover, China might be up to something completely different.
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday, December 20th. Okay, today we're going to shift gears a little bit. I want to jump back into talking about China, and this is a little bit of a setup actually, because we are also going to have an episode that talks about the Suez Canal and what's going on in the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is owned by Egypt, and just for now, just remember it is a major thoroughfare for shipping. Right now, there's a lot of craziness going on in that Suez Canal area where the Houthis, which are another, I guess, I don't know what the heck to call them, freedom fighting Islamic fundamentalist group. There we go. I'll cover both sides with that. But they're basically... They're disrupting the shipping ports that are going through the Suez Canal, which is owned by Egypt, and obviously it's a major thoroughfare for ships to get trade through. It is estimated that the Suez Canal generates $6 to $15 billion a year for Egypt, and so there is a talk about what's going on in Gaza as being a little nefarious and part of something called the Ben Gurion Canal, a new canalway that the United States, Israel, and then I think England's definitely involved. I don't know if France is involved, and we'll talk about that later because I don't think they are involved, and that's why they've kind of broken free from England and the United States on their stance with this. Maybe they're pissed they didn't get an invite to that party. Same thing with Canada. But anyway, before we go into that later this week in terms of the Suez Canal, I do want to talk about the Belt and Road Initiative in China. This is also referred to as the New Silk Road. And, this again is something that needs to be in your mind somewhere. China is just incredible at these slow plays. This whole process started in 2012, where basically, what they're doing with this Belt and Road Initiative is they're basically giving money and funding different projects to different countries. And they're partnering with, so many places, and the money is used, to build much needed infrastructure within those countries. But the problem is...
See, the BRI is not a gift. It is a debt trap, a means to lure developing nations into borrowing more than they can afford. Once they are buried under this debt, you enslave them by seizing strategic assets as collateral. It's already happening around the world. The Gwadar Port in Pakistan has been leased to China for 40 years. The Obok military base in Djibouti has been leased for 10 years. Tajikistan had to cede more than 1,000 square kilometers of land for a petty loan. Laos had to let go of its entire national electric grid to a Chinese company. The Hambantota Port in Sri Lanka has been leased to China for a period of 99 years. Same with the Malacca Gateway in Malaysia, in Chinese control for 99 years.
All right, seriously, I know you and I will throw myself into that category. We probably don't know really any of we might even not know some of those countries, let alone those projects. But I will tell you, China has immersed themselves globally in probably close to 100 countries with this Belt and Road Initiative. Again, it's called the New Silk Road. Let me give you some stats on this. This Belt and Road Initiative touches a combined population in all countries of over 6.4 billion people, okay? The Belt and Road Initiative touches 61% of the world's population. I mean, that's nuts. I actually think it's higher now. This number was from 2021. It's probably closer to 70% of the world's population. It's $29 trillion of combined GDP of all the countries involved. And then $6 trillion of trade has already been contracted and conducted between China and the BRI Belt and Road Initiative countries between 2014 and 2017. So that was the latest data I can find on how much trade they transacted. So think about that, 6 trillion 2014 to 2017, 2017 to 2024, let's say, because we're practically in 2024, gosh, it's probably closer to 20 trillion, especially because of all the needs from the COVID situation that happened. Remember, when COVID happened, who made out like a bandit? China did, because all of those COVID supplies, sanitization supplies, masks, all that, the Chinese factories, they had a field day with all that stuff.
It's not just an economic plan. It's a plan to dominate the world. The completion date of each project is 2049. That's 28 years from now. Why 2049? Because it marks the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. The BRI's completion is meant to coincide with it. The Communist Party of China has a thing for numbers and symbolism. Plus, it doesn't have to worry about elections every few years. Every time it plans forever.
So again, the completion of all this stuff is 2049. I've said it before in other episodes, especially when it comes to China and Russia even. These guys, man, they are patient. They play the long ball. They are in this for the long haul. What else could I use with the word long? Not long duck dong. That guy was from 16 Candles. Forget him. But you get my drift, man. These guys are patient. They're in this, for a while, and they're willing to sit back. Again, the reason I'm playing this episode or doing this episode today, besides the fact that I wanted to do it, we've talked about the One China social credit score system, the One China policy. That was episode number 56. If you did not listen to that, you might want to go back and listen to that. I think it's good to understand, their social credit score, system that was implemented in 2017, because honestly, that could be a case study for the rest of the world, as I talked in that episode. But then this, New Silk Road, this BRI Belt and Road Initiative, this is another power play from the Chinese. And so I'm going to relate this all to the Suez Canal episode because, again, the Belt and Road Initiative actually also, as one of its partners, is Egypt and the Suez Canal. So they're talking about expanding the Suez Canal. If you remember last year, there was a evergreen ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal, which that was kind of crazy. It's like this ship somehow went sideways, literally and figuratively, and ended up basically blocking the Suez Canal and disrupting business and shipping for 6 days. There was such a giant economic impact. To me, I think that was like, okay, I don't know who's behind it. I really don't. But I think it was a test case to say, okay, let's see what happens if a ship blocks the Suez Canal, and let's see how much havoc that can wreak. And that rook a lot of havoc. I just made up the word rook, but that wreaked a lot of havoc. Sorry about that. And so what's taking place in Gaza right now, and what we're going to talk about in another episode, is a project called the Ben Gurion Canal, named after the founder of Israel, which really talks about creating a competing canal to the Suez Canal. And like I said, this is backed by the United States, Israel, England. I'm not sure of France and Canada. I mean, those are the usual suspects that partner up together. But for some reason, I think France and Canada are kind of squeezed out of that deal. So the other storyline, again, is what China is doing with all this stuff. And so, is it possible? Is it plausible? That's one of my new favorite expressions. Is it plausible that's what is taking place in Gaza? We talked in another previous episode about the Gaza marine natural gas that's been discovered. There's also been, some oil discovered in northern Gaza. And if you remember, that's where the primary bombings and all that started. So is it plausible that what's taking place in Gaza, has more to do with the United States and Western allies really trying to combat this Belt and Road Initiative from China and trying to combat the global plan that China is implementing, along with, is China partnering up with Russia, with Iran? Are they partnering up with North Korea? Are they all sick of the petrodollar? Is this also in a way, to weaken and remove the petrodollar as the global reserve currency? There was an episode that we did on the petrodollar. So if you haven't listened to that, that's another good one to listen to. So man, there's a lot of storylines. There's a lot of complicated Game of Thrones related storylines that are happening. I did talk to one friend of mine who's pretty knowledgeable on this geopolitics stuff, and he told me, he really texted me a great comment. He said, the entire goal of the Belt and Road is to make loans that cannot get paid back, then effectively take over the ports, rails, electricity that had been defaulted. It's imperialism without firing a bullet. The most cost-effective in terms of blood and treasure. Strategy is right out of Art of War. So he was talking about the Sun Tzu Art of War. Quick shout out to my buddy Alex Sabetti. Back in the day, he wrote a screenplay called The Art of Cool. What a great title, right? The Art of Cool. He wrote that in like 1997, ended up selling it, and it was the largest screenplay that had been sold since Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's Good Will Hunting. So shout out to Sabetti on that one. That was amazing. Unfortunately, it never made it to the screen, which I wish it had, because had that thing made it to the screen, I'd probably be working for Sabetti. So I guess thank God it didn't make it to the screen, because I don't really want to work for Sabetti. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so again, getting back to China, gosh, the crazy thing about China is there have been so many protests that start in China, and man, they shut those things down quick. There were a ton of protests in regards to COVID.
All over China, people are rising up, not just in one city, but across the entire country, protesting the tyrannical COVID lockdowns, protesting, shouting, demanding freedom. This man here demanding that Xi Jinping be removed as the leader of the Communist Party and that the Communist Party come to an end in China. They want freedom. They are done with the tyranny. And I'm reminded of some important words that have always inspired me, that when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. And that is what we're seeing play out across China right now.
Man, that's a powerful quote. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. Gosh, you could apply that to a few different scenarios. I'll let you think about which scenarios I'm thinking about right now. But anyway, so the China stuff, man, this stuff is it's in play, and I would not put it past these global superpowers for all of this flexing that China's doing. Remember, China also is part of BRICS. We've talked about BRICS in episode number 3. Remember the central bank digital currency, the CBDC talk we've done about China. They are championing CBDC. I think they've already got it up and running since 2017 with a digital version of the yuan. So remember, they're tracking everything, at a government level. You've got the Chinese social credit score, which I'm going to do another deeper dive on that. But remember that social credit score, which we talked about in the previous episode, which is part of that one China policy I talked about earlier, this is a way to basically control people and to monitor people. And if you're saying the wrong things on social media, your social credit score gets impacted. Next thing you know, you can't buy an airline ticket. You can't travel. You can't maybe purchase certain goods using your central bank digital currency that's on your phone in certain parts of the country or parts of town. They really are creating an interesting mechanism for control. And so the question becomes, is this being done in a silo? Is this being done on a country level? Or is this scoping up and China is the case study and then they're going to roll this out country by country? I don't know. But you know what? It's plausible.
CBDC can improve financial inclusion is through what we call programmability. That is, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program, to create smart contract, to allow targeted policy functions. For example, welfare payment. For example, consumption coupon. For example, food stamp. By programming CBDC, those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized. For example, for food. So this potential programmability can help government agencies to precisely target their support.
That was a Chinese ambassador to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Dude, that was scary. I mean, he basically, I will say they don't really hide this stuff. I mean, they come out in the open and talk about it. Actually, very similar to the movie on Netflix, Leave the World Behind. Has anybody seen it? Okay, that movie came out about a week ago or a couple weeks ago on Netflix. It stars Julia Roberts and a couple other people. It's really good. It is executive produced by Barack and Michelle Obama, which is very interesting. But if you have not watched it on Netflix, it's a good movie. It's an interesting movie, and it's very timely with, I guess, the state of affairs. I'm not going to ruin it right now, although, man, it is getting a tremendous amount of chatter on the internet, as well as TikTok and YouTube and a couple other places, Instagram as well. And so maybe I will do an episode on it because there's a tremendous amount of symbolism in that movie. And then that you're kind of like, dude, that's weird. Why would the Obamas be part of that? Because again, it's just, it's interesting. I'm going to leave it at that. But anyway, so that programmability of the CBDCs, again, this is all tent poles of topics we've talked about and covered during many episodes of Deep Shallow Dive. Again, I want you to keep this all front and center. You've got central bank digital currencies, one. You've got the petrodollar and the potential demise of the petrodollar, which would weaken America. It would strengthen other countries such as China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. That's two. You've got this, ongoing, I guess, distractions that have continued to take place. So does that make it plausible that there's an even bigger picture going on where maybe instead of enemies, they're giving the perception of being enemies or frenemies, but maybe they're all friends, who knows, to get their own central bank digital currencies implemented in each of their respective countries. Right now, 110 nations are at one of several stages of the CBDC. So remember that, tent pole. We've got the tent pole of the military-industrial complex and money going into the military-industrial complex. We've seen that play out. over the past several years in Ukraine. Now we're talking about Israel. Remember, I've mentioned a few different times how they're lumping Taiwan into the mix. So Taiwan, which again is a wholly run, kind of like a subsidiary of China, but China wants Taiwan to be part of their legacy. But then the semiconductor industry, which the United States kind of oversees and dominates, is headquartered in Taiwan. So you've got that at play. We've got our southern border at play. Anyway, listen, I'm not trying to, I guess be an alarmist with all this stuff. And like I've talked before, at the end of the day, one of my favorite sayings, let's just be aware of it. I mean, it's not like there's much that can be done, at least maybe not at our level, but having the awareness of what's going on and having a little insight into all these different moving parts, honestly, I think can help make sense of the current moving parts a little bit better. And, like I've said from the beginning, the situation that's taking place in Gaza between Israel and Palestine, this is nothing new. This is absolutely nothing new. I found an interesting quote from Yasser Arafat, actually an interview from Yasser Arafat, who was the head of the PLO, which is now the Palestinian Authority, the PA, and it was from 45 years ago. And what's crazy is if I played that clip, which I will play at some point, and I said this was Mahmoud Abbas being interviewed yesterday, it would be exactly the same, meaning that what was taking place 45 years ago is still taking place today. There's really no difference. That interview with Arafat literally could have been yesterday if he was still alive. So anyway, let's just try and just have a working knowledge of all this stuff. We're going deep, we're staying shallow, we're diving in. And again, at the end of the day, I hope this is interesting. I hope that this kind of brings, a little bit of awareness. At the same time, enjoy your life, get out there, do the things you want to do. It's the holiday season. Enjoy the time with your family and friends. Make sure you're getting steps in and moving and exercising. We don't want to go into 2024 with an extra 5 pounds that we need to lose. We probably already have that extra 5 pounds that we need to lose, so let's not make that 10. But at the end of the day, enjoy yourselves and let's just be aware of all this stuff. And hopefully, we can continue to make sense of things. And I will say, the awareness of many of these things because of social media, it's at an all-time high. So, if enough people get behind certain things, I think it can make an impact. So anyway, stay positive. I've said it before. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Casey Kasem. I'll have to try to find some Dick Clark quotes. Some of those old school guys, they have to have good endings. Anyway, to end, I'll quote Ron Burgundy. Stay classy, San Diego, and call a spade a spade.
This episode was brought to you by Boost Liquid Vitamins. Wake up, take your Boost, start your day. Drink your vitamins, build your immune system with Boost. Available on Boost.com.